They called him dangerous, worthless, even rabid. A three-legged stray dog limping outside a bakery, pelted with rocks by a crowd that never knew the truth. But one bystander hit record, and what the camera captured didn't just silence the town, it shattered hearts around the world. It started on a gray morning outside Arley Street Bakery. The scent of warm cinnamon rolls drifted through the air, mixing with steam from coffee cups and laughter from the crowd gathering at the storefront. Locals lined up as they did every Saturday, young couples, high school kids, retirees, all drawn by fresh pastries and routine. Then he limped into view, a German shepherd, matted fur clinging to ribs, three legs scraping against the cold sidewalk. His right hind leg was missing, nothing but a scarred stump where it used to be. He staggered forward slowly, body trembling, one eye swollen shut. His fur was singed and crusted with blood around old wounds that looked anything but healed. He wasn't barking, he wasn't growling, he just stood there, staring through the bakery window. One man dropped his cup. "Get that mutt out of here," someone else shouted. "He's diseased." The shepherd didn't move. Then came the first rock, a small one, from a teenager in a hoodie. It hit the dog's flank with a sharp thwack. The shepherd flinched, let out a soft yelp, but didn't run. He just shifted his weight, favoring his one good side, still looking at the door. More stones followed. "Go on, scram!" "Ugh, that thing stinks." The dog lowered his head, tail tucked, but held his ground. Behind him, the bakery door swung open. Mr. Chen, the owner, stepped out in a flour-stained apron, rubbing his hands with a towel. Hey, what's going on here?" he called out. A woman pointed. "That mangy stray won't leave. It's scaring customers." Chen's eyes landed on the dog, his brow furrowed. "He's injured." "Yeah, and probably full of fleas," another customer snapped. "Someone needs to call animal control before it bites a kid." The shepherd took a single step forward, limping hard, his paw leaving a tiny smear of blood on the concrete. Behind the glass, a tray of fresh bread sat cooling on a rack. He looked at it, not hungrily, longingly. Mr. Chen stepped closer. "Shoo," he said quietly, waving his hand. "You can't stay here." The dog looked up at him with tired, glassy eyes, then slowly sat down on the sidewalk, legs shaking beneath his weight. By now, a small group had gathered, snapping photos, recording video. Some laughed, some jeered. A few stood silently, uncertain whether to feel disgust or guilt. The shepherd lowered his head, eyes never leaving the bakery's door, not even when another stone struck his side. A young girl in the crowd looked up at her mother. "Why isn't he running away?" "I don't know, sweetheart," the woman said softly, biting her lip. The shepherd didn't run. He waited, because something inside him was stronger than pain, stronger than fear, and tied to that bakery by more than anyone could imagine. By the time the crowd dispersed, Mr. Chen was left standing alone, the injured dog still slumped near the bakery's entrance like a shadow that refused to leave. He sighed deeply, wiping his hands on his apron, then looked down at the creature barely clinging to its dignity. "You can't stay here," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than to the dog. The shepherd didn't move. Blood from its missing leg had dried into the concrete now. Flies buzzed around the matted fur, and yet, the dog made no attempt to defend himself, no effort to beg for food. Just quiet stillness and those eyes, sunken but alert, watching the door like it held something sacred. Mr. Chen turned back inside, the bell above the bakery door jingling as it shut behind him. The warmth of cinnamon, sugar, and baked dough enveloped him. Inside, his daughter May was stacking croissants into display trays. She looked up with a frown. "Is he still out there?" Mr. Chen nodded grimly. "Won't leave." May walked over to the window, pulling back the curtain. "People were throwing rocks. Did you see that?" "I saw." He leaned on the counter. "What if someone calls the health department? We get shut down for having a diseased stray parked outside, and we're done." "But he's hurt." "I know." Mr. Chen was a kind man. Everyone in Arley knew that. He'd once fed a hungry family for weeks without charging a cent. He gave away day-old bread to shelters. But this dog was different. There was fear in the way people looked at it, and fear was bad for business. He walked to the office in the back and opened the drawer under the desk. Inside sat a small, unopened box labeled Nighthawk Security. Cam 1080p, a system he'd bought after the last break-in but had never bothered installing, until now. That afternoon, he and May mounted the camera above the front door. May adjusted the angle. "You think someone will hurt him again?" she asked. Mr. Chen hesitated. I want to know why he won't leave." That night, the bakery closed as usual at 6 p.m. The last customer left with a paper bag of baguettes and a sideways glance at the unmoving dog. By 8 p.m., the lights inside were off, and the security camera blinked red above the doorway, watching silently. The shepherd lay curled in the same spot, wounded, worn, but alert. Every once in a while, he lifted his head and sniffed the air. Across the street, someone paused, watching him, then walked away without a word. Inside the bakery, Mr. Chen sat at his desk, staring at the monitor, May beside him. "He's not just a stray," she said quietly. And Mr. Chen, watching that dog refuse to leave his doorstep, felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not anger, curiosity. By the next morning, the footage hadn't even been reviewed yet, but the town had already started talking. Someone had snapped a photo during the commotion. The image spread fast on social media. The battered, three-legged dog standing in front of the bakery, blood crusted down his leg, while a group of teens in the background held rocks and wore smirks. The caption read, "This is what's happening on Arley Street. This poor animal was attacked for just standing there." It was posted by a high school sophomore named Leah, who hadn't thrown any stones, but had filmed everything. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, but later that night, while scrolling through her phone, something about the dog's expression in the video stuck with her. He didn't flinch like a feral stray. He stood still, like he was guarding something. By sunrise, her video had reached over 20,000 views. Hashtags began forming. Comments exploded. What kind of monsters throw rocks at a disabled animal? Where's animal control? Someone help that poor dog. But not all voices were kind. Some locals commented things like, "It's dangerous. I wouldn't want my kid near that thing. You don't know what diseases he has. Should have been put down years ago." The town was split. In the bakery, May was already refreshing the video when Mr. Chen walked in holding 2 paper cups of tea. He set one down beside her. "Is that our dog?" he asked. May nodded. "It's everywhere." Mr. Chen rubbed his temple. "The phone's been ringing all morning. One caller said they're filing a sanitation complaint." "But look at the comments," May argued. "People are organizing. They're asking where he came from. Some want to bring blankets or food." He didn't respond immediately, just sat down beside her and watched the screen. The dog, filthy, wounded, and still missing a leg, had somehow become a lightning rod, a mirror for people's cruelty, and for their compassion. Across town, things escalated. Local teens were identified and called out online. One parent visited the bakery to demand the footage be taken down, claiming their son was being cyberbullied. Another woman came by, quiet and tearful, and left a bowl of water near the door. By noon, animal control had called twice. The second time, they threatened to remove the dog by force. That evening, just before closing, Mr. Chen stepped outside to find the shepherd curled up by the bakery window again, barely breathing. He looked worse, tired, thinner, eyes dim. He sighed and knelt beside him. "You're becoming famous, old boy," he murmured. The shepherd blinked at him once. Behind them, May opened the security footage from the night before, and what they saw would change everything, because that broken dog hadn't just been lying there. He had come back. The security footage opened in grainy black and white, time-stamped 2:08 a.m. Outside the bakery, the street was quiet, empty, lifeless, the kind of silence only small towns know after midnight. Then, from the left edge of the frame, the German shepherd limped into view. May leaned forward, her eyes locked on the screen. Mr. Chen sat beside her, arms crossed, tension pinched in his shoulders. The dog moved slowly, carefully, every step on his 3 legs deliberate and shaky. His silhouette swayed slightly, head low, tail dragging behind him like a burden too heavy for his body. But he didn't collapse. He didn't wander. He went straight to the bakery door and stopped. The camera caught it clearly. He pressed his nose against the glass, gently, as if trying to see inside. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. Just stood there. Then, in a heartbreaking moment, he licked the glass. May's breath caught. "He came back," she whispered. Mr. Chen didn't speak. The dog circled once, then lowered himself into the exact spot he'd been lying earlier that day. He curled up tightly, facing the door. For a minute, nothing happened. And then May noticed something strange. "Wait, pause it, zoom in." Mr. Chen adjusted the feed, enlarging the upper corner of the screen. The collar, the dog's battered, dirt-caked collar, caught the light for just a second. Dangling from it, barely visible, was a small scratched metal tag. But beneath that, something else. "Is that a USB drive?" May asked, blinking in disbelief. The image was fuzzy, but clear enough. Tied with what looked like a twist of fishing wire to the collar was a tiny rectangular object. Rough, dirty, but unmistakably a flash drive. "Why would a stray dog be wearing that?" Mr. Chen asked, stunned. May stood abruptly. "I need to get closer to him." "You're not going out there alone." "He's not dangerous," she insisted. "He came back here for a reason. We just don't know what it is yet." She grabbed a leftover biscuit from the display case, still warm from the evening bake, and stepped carefully outside. The dog didn't move when she approached, though his eyes fluttered open at the scent of bread. She crouched low, voice soft. "Hey, buddy. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." She held out the biscuit. The dog sniffed it, hesitated, then took it gently from her hand. May reached toward his collar, heart pounding. The dog tensed for a moment, but didn't snap. Her fingers closed around the wire and carefully pulled off the drive. Inside, the screen still played the paused frame, the shepherd sitting in the cold, guarding a door he shouldn't remember. But now, Mr. Chen and May knew one thing for certain. He didn't just come back for food. He came back with a message. May stood frozen outside the bakery, the cold USB drive clutched tightly in her hand. Behind her, the dog lowered his head onto his paws again, as if the mission was over, as if the message had been delivered and he could finally rest. She whispered, "What are you trying to tell us?" Mr. Chen pushed the bakery door open and stepped out. "Did you get it?" She nodded and held up the drive. It was tied to his collar with fishing wire, carefully, like someone wanted it to be found. He looked down at the dog. "You think this is some kind of, evidence?" "I don't know," she said. But someone trusted this dog enough to carry it. They helped the shepherd inside, spreading an old blanket by the counter and laying a water bowl beside him. He didn't resist. He limped in, collapsed gently onto the soft fabric, and let out a long, trembling sigh. May crouched beside him again, gently brushing away some of the caked mud and crusted fur around his neck. Her hand paused on the old, bent tag hanging above where the USB had been. She tilted it toward the light. The engraving was nearly worn away, but it was there. REX. A name, faint, scratched, but real. Beneath it, a longer, more faded line barely legible under years of wear. If found, return to. The rest was unreadable, erased by time, by weather, by pain. "His name is Rex," May whispered. The dog's ears twitched at the sound, just barely, as if he remembered. Inside the bakery's office, they inserted the drive into the old laptop Mr. Chen kept for accounting. For a moment, the screen flickered. The folder inside was simple. No labels, no encryption. Just one video file, time-stamped from over 2 years ago. May clicked it open. What unfolded on the screen was grainy, shot in shaky night vision, clearly from a body cam or security gear. The scene was chaos, screaming voices, flashing lights, a car screeching away. And then, Rex. The same dog, younger and stronger, bolting across the screen and leaping in front of a small child frozen in a crosswalk. A moment later, the screen shook violently as a dark SUV plowed through the shot. The dog took the full brunt of the impact, shielding the child completely. May gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Rex didn't run away from danger. He ran toward it. The clip ended abruptly, followed by a few seconds of static, then black. She turned to her father. "He saved that child." Mr. Chen leaned in close, eyes fixed on the screen. And someone captured it. Someone who didn't want the world to forget. They looked back toward Rex, who had curled up beneath the counter, sleeping at last, peacefully, as if carrying the truth all this time had worn him down. And now he could finally rest, And outside, the streets of Arley still buzzed with whispers of cruelty. Unaware that a hero had been lying in plain sight all along. The video file had ended, but May wasn't ready to look away. Her heart pounded, eyes still locked on the blank screen. She leaned forward and scrolled through the contents of the USB again. Another folder appeared, this one labeled simply, Rex, Archive. She clicked it open. There were more files inside. Some were grainy photos, Rex in a crisp black harness, standing proudly beside a uniformed man whose badge number had been blurred. Others were documents, scanned reports, digital logs, a few letters, the kind that told stories quietly, without ever meaning to. "Look at this," she whispered. Mr. Chen stepped closer. May pulled up a scanned letter addressed to the K-9 Division Commander, Fort Preston, dated nearly 6 years ago. It detailed an incident involving Rex, then a highly decorated bomb detection dog, who had disobeyed a direct order during a joint operation. The dog diverted from the designated path, ignoring commands, and charged toward an unverified location. It sounded like a failure at first, until the next paragraph, one where he uncovered a hidden explosive device seconds before detonation. His action saved the lives of 3 soldiers and 2 civilians, including a young girl who had wandered into the blast radius. Mr. Chen exhaled slowly. He was punished for that? The handler defended him, May replied. But after the accident, he went missing. Another photo revealed itself. Rex sitting beside the same handler, but this time, the man was in a wheelchair. His smile was strained, his arm resting on Rex's back like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Then came another file, a body cam recording, titled only Final Transfer. They played it. The footage showed Rex, still strong, but noticeably limping. The camera panned to a crate in the back of a military van. Voices in the background murmured about overseas transport and no next of kin for adoption. Then a new voice entered, female, uncertain. "We can't send him like this. Look at him. He needs care, not a cage." The video ended there. May stared at the screen, her voice soft. They were going to dispose of him. Or worse, Mr. Chen added grimly. A chill settled in the bakery office. All this time, Rex had carried not just wounds, but stories. He had once been a protector, trained to run toward danger. He had saved lives, disobeyed to do the right thing, and for it, he was cast out. Abandoned. But why return to this bakery? May glanced toward the front, where Rex still lay asleep. "I think he remembers someone," she whispered. "Here?" Mr. Chen asked. May nodded slowly. "Yes, and I think he's still waiting for them." And for the first time since the battered dog appeared, they realized this wasn't the end of Rex's story. It was the beginning of a truth buried beneath years of silence. It was a rainy Wednesday morning when the man in the brown coat appeared outside the bakery. He didn't come in right away. He stood beneath the awning, shielding himself from the drizzle, staring through the window at the sleeping shepherd curled inside. May spotted him first. She was wiping down the front counter when she noticed the figure, tall, stiff posture, eyes fixed on the dog. Not in fear, not in disgust, but something else. Recognition. She called for her father. Mr. Chen came out, drying his hands on a towel. "Another protester?" "No," May whispered. "He's not here for the pastries." They opened the door just as the bell above jingled. The man stepped in slowly, cautiously, his boots soaked from the puddles outside. He removed his hood. His face was weathered, lined with exhaustion, eyes ringed with years of unshed grief. A faded scar curved just beneath his cheekbone, the kind that told its own quiet story. But as soon as Rex lifted his head, something changed. The dog's ears twitched, then his body tensed, as if a current had passed through him. The man dropped to one knee. "Rex!" he breathed. The dog froze. And then, like a dam breaking after years of drought, Rex let out a trembling whine, deep, guttural, raw. He dragged his injured body forward, collapsing into the man's arms. May covered her mouth, tears already forming. Mr. Chen took a step back, stunned. The man held Rex tightly, whispering his name over and over, eyes squeezed shut. "I thought they sent you away. I thought I lost you." It was him, the handler. His name was Thomas Graves, and for years, he'd believed Rex was dead. I searched everywhere, he explained later, over tea at the back of the bakery. After the mission, they said he was too injured for service, that he'd been transported for rehabilitation, but records vanished. I filed requests, tried to adopt him, begged every department. He looked down at the scar on his hand. They told me he was unfit, that they'd handle it. Mr. Chen clenched his jaw. By handle it, you mean they discarded him, Thomas said bitterly, just like they discarded the truth. May brought out the USB. Thomas's hands shook as he held it. I thought this footage was destroyed. We think Rex came back here for a reason, May said softly. Maybe he was trying to find someone, or remind someone of what happened. Thomas looked at the dog, now sleeping peacefully beside him for the first time in years. He remembered the way, he said, voice cracking. All this time, and he remembered. Silence settled over the room, but not the kind that hurt, the kind that heals, and as rain tapped gently on the windows, it became clear. Rex had never been lost. He was just trying to come home. By sunrise the next day, the video had gone viral. Leah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Every 5 seconds, a new comment, a new share, a new message. The latest clip was only 35 seconds long. Grainy footage of a battered, three-legged dog limping into a bakery, only to collapse in the arms of a man with a scar and trembling hands. The voiceover simply said, "This K9 was thrown away after saving lives. He walked miles to find the only person who ever loved him." This is what loyalty looks like. Within hours, it was everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even news outlets. Wounded war dog finds handler after years apart. The bakery that became a beacon of hope. Disgraced military program under scrutiny after viral dog video. The headlines varied, but the heart of it remained the same. Rex had endured what no living being should. Pain, abandonment, betrayal, and still, he had chosen to forgive. People from around the world began reaching out. Veterans groups offered medical care. Animal shelters shared the story with captions like, "Every dog remembers who saved them." Rex never forgot. One woman from Colorado offered to fund a prosthetic leg. An elderly man in Poland sent a handwritten letter with only 2 lines. "I had a dog like him once. He saved my son's life. Tell Rex he's not alone." Outside the bakery, it started with a small crowd. First, a young couple with a leash in hand, just wanting to thank the dog in person. Then, a man in a wheelchair, who waited over an hour just to pat Rex's head. By mid-afternoon, local police had cordoned off the sidewalk to manage foot traffic. May watched it all from inside, stunned. She hadn't expected this. Not the signs, not the flowers, not the growing shrine around the bakery window. And certainly not the camera crews now parked across the street. News vans, microphones, boom poles. Even a major morning show had called to request an exclusive interview with the bakery girl who helped save Rex. Thomas stayed inside most of the day, quiet and overwhelmed. He kept one hand on Rex's fur, anchoring himself. Mr. Chen shook his head as he peered out the blinds. All this for one dog. "No," May said, "not just a dog, a story, a reminder." Thomas nodded slowly. Of what we throw away, and what still finds its way back. By nightfall, people lit candles outside the bakery. Dozens of them, glowing softly in the dusk. Some stood silently. Others shared stories of their own lost dogs, of battles fought and forgotten, of pain carried for years. And through it all, Rex remained curled near the window, his tired eyes watching. He had become a symbol now. But to May and Thomas, he was something even more powerful. Proof that even the most broken souls can find their way home and spark a fire in a world that desperately needed light. It wasn't long before the military came knocking. 2 black SUVs pulled up in front of the bakery just after noon, sleek and unmarked except for the small US government plates glinting beneath the bumper. The growing crowd outside fell into a hush, cameras turning, whispers rising like smoke. May stepped outside cautiously, wiping flour from her apron. Thomas followed, immediately tensing at the sight of the uniforms stepping out. Polished shoes, pressed jackets, emotionless faces. Rex didn't growl, but he didn't move either. The man in the lead wore silver oak leaves on his collar. His name tag read, Colonel Hawkins. He approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of calm. "We're not here to take him by force," he said, voice smooth. "Just to talk." Thomas narrowed his eyes. "Talk? About what? The years you let him suffer?" The colonel didn't flinch. "There are things you don't know." "No," Thomas cut in, voice sharper now. "There are things you buried. You tossed him aside like scrap metal. He saved children, soldiers, me, and you threw him out like defective gear." The colonel sighed. "I won't pretend we didn't fail, but Rex was part of a classified K-9 unit. His last mission? That footage shouldn't even exist. The program was dismantled for a reason." May stepped forward, protective. "You mean covered up?" "We want to make it right," Hawkins said, glancing between them. "Offer full retirement benefits, medical care, even a memorial plaque in the Hall of Valor. But we need the footage, the drive. It was never supposed to leave base." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. "You want to silence him again, but with flowers and a folded flag this time?" A tense silence followed. Rex, still lying at the bakery's front window, slowly pushed himself to his feet. He limped to Thomas's side, pressing against his leg. No bark, no growl, just a quiet defiance. May shook her head. "He's not a symbol for your mistake. He's not a secret to be buried." "We're not handing him over," Thomas said, finality in his voice. The colonel exhaled, looking almost sad. "You know, there was a time he was the pride of the division. They all said he was different, smarter, more loyal, maybe too loyal." He turned, adjusting his cap. "For what it's worth, I'm glad he made it back." Then, with nothing more than a nod, the officers got back into their vehicles and drove off. The crowd parted quietly, some filming, others simply watching in awe. But to Rex, none of it mattered. He had chosen his side years ago, on that battlefield. In that moment, he disobeyed orders to save a life. And now, standing beside the only man who had never left him, he was finally being seen, not as equipment, not as property, but as a hero who never needed permission to do what was right. By the weekend, the bakery sidewalk had transformed from a place of quiet tribute into a movement. What began as candles and flowers turned into banners, signs, and chants. Young people with service dog vests on their golden retrievers stood beside elderly veterans in wheelchairs. Children sat cross-legged on the curb, holding posters that read, "Rex is a hero. Not just a dog, a soldier. We stand with him." May watched through the window, speechless. The same streets where people once hurled rocks at a limping stray were now lined with strangers standing in solidarity, united by one dog's unspoken courage. Thomas stood nearby, arms crossed, his eyes flicking from the growing crowd to Rex sleeping peacefully inside. The first major protest came on Saturday morning. Hundreds gathered. Word had spread that the military had attempted to reclaim the footage, and possibly Rex. That alone ignited fury, but when someone on Reddit posted the footage of the confrontation with Colonel Hawkins, the internet caught fire. By nightfall, hashtags were trending globally. Justice for Rex, Wash, hero, with 3 legs, Wash, 'cause he didn't forget us. As news crews returned in full force, broadcasting live from the corner of 4th and Lindley, once an ordinary bakery, now the epicenter of something deeply human. One reporter turned to the camera and said, "We often wait for heroes in uniforms." But this time, the uniform had fur. A local artist painted a massive mural on the brick wall beside the bakery. A depiction of Rex, eyes full of resolve, front paw lifted, the US flag behind him, not for nationalism, but for remembrance. But not everyone was thrilled. A counter voice emerged from bureaucratic halls. Some officials called the story misrepresented. Others insisted the dog was handled per protocol. May scrolled through the headlines in disbelief. Decorated K9 sparks military controversy. Emotions cloud facts, say officials. Can dogs really remember? She slammed her phone down. They still don't get it. Thomas didn't answer. He was outside now, talking to a mother who had driven hours with her autistic son, just to let the boy touch Rex's fur. The moment the boy pressed his tiny hand against Rex's side, the shepherd leaned in, steady and still. The boy laughed. It was the kind of laugh that could dissolve 1,000 headlines. Later that evening, as a light drizzle began to fall, A group of school children lit new candles, forming the word trust across the pavement. Someone brought a guitar. Others sang. The protest wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about memory, about loyalty, about the belief that even when a being is broken, abandoned, or dismissed, they are still worthy of love and truth. And as Rex lay quietly, his head resting on Thomas's boot, the world outside the bakery refused to let his story fade into silence. Because this time, the people weren't just watching. They were answering his courage with their own. The call came on a quiet Monday morning. It was from a news producer at GNN, the biggest global network. She wanted May to come on their primetime show and tell Rex's story. Not just clips, not edited footage, live, in front of millions. May froze. She had never been on a stage before, never imagined being at the center of anything. Her life had been flour, dough, ovens, and quiet comfort behind the counter. But this wasn't about comfort anymore. It was about truth. It was about Rex. Thomas placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this." May shook her head. "Number I do." That night, she stood under the lights of a live television studio. The makeup artist stabbed her cheeks, the mic tech adjusted her collar, and the anchor across from her gave a practiced smile. "Ready?" he asked. May looked directly into the camera. "I'm not here because I want attention," she began. "I'm here because a dog limped into my bakery, collapsed in my arms, and changed everything I thought I knew about loyalty." She took a breath. "I saw people throw rocks at him. I saw children scream. I saw grown men cross the street like he was some kind of monster." Her voice cracked. "And I saw him still wag his tail." The studio went silent. She continued. "What they didn't know was that this dog, Rex, served in a war. He saved children from bombs. He disobeyed orders to save his handler. He was discarded, wounded, and left to wander." The anchor leaned forward. "And you believe he remembered all of that?" May didn't hesitate. "I don't believe it. I know it." She showed the footage live, the body cam files, the reunion, the military's quiet attempt to suppress the truth. "But this story isn't just about a dog," she said. "It's about what we throw away. It's about the people we silence. It's about what real loyalty looks like." Rex remembered his pain and still chose love. That's something most humans forget how to do. Her final words hit harder than any headline. "We owe him more than applause. We owe him a future." By the time she left the studio, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Social media lit up with millions of new shares. Celebrities reposted her speech. A senator tweeted, "When truth limps to your doorstep on 3 legs, you listen." We're listening now. Back at the bakery, Thomas watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. Rex didn't move, but his ears twitched, as if, even from a distance, he heard her voice and knew she was fighting for him. And that night, for the first time, May didn't just bake bread. She helped bake justice into history. Because in a world full of noise, she chose to stand and speak where others stayed silent. The letter arrived on a Wednesday, folded in crisp white, no return address, the name bakery owner scrawled neatly in blue ink. May almost didn't open it. She was busy sorting through another box of supplies from the growing support network when the envelope slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Something about its weight, its strange stillness in the chaos, made her pause. Inside was a single page, yellowed slightly, handwritten. The ink faded but careful. "To whomever found him," it began. "This dog was never meant to disappear. He saved my brother in Fallujah, took shrapnel to the leg, and still dragged him through gunfire. The doctors said he wouldn't walk again, but he did. And when my brother died, Rex wouldn't leave the hospital room for 3 days." May's hands began to tremble. "I fought to adopt him. They denied me, said he was unfit for civilian placement. I never knew what happened after, until now. I saw the footage. I cried for hours. There was no name, no request, just one final sentence. If he's still fighting to live, then maybe I should start fighting again too." She read it twice, 3 times, then handed it to Thomas. He sat at the small table in the corner of the bakery, the letter in one hand, his free hand resting on Rex's back. Rex was sleeping, but only just. His tail gave a slow thump, as if he knew the letter was about him. Thomas looked up. He's changed more lives than we'll ever know. That night, May scanned the letter and posted it online with one caption. Rex's story didn't start here, but it won't end quietly either. The internet exploded. Veterans from around the world began sharing their own memories. K9 partners who saved them, who stood between them and death, who didn't get medals or parades but deserved far more. One man wrote, "My dog didn't come home, but Rex did. Let him carry their stories too." Suddenly, this wasn't just a story about Rex. It was about all of them. The lost ones, the quiet heroes, the four-legged soldiers who never asked for glory, only purpose. Thomas started compiling the letters into a digital archive, the valor they buried. Every entry was a name, a photo, a memory, and a vow. We remember. Outside, the protest was still growing, but something else had begun, something deeper than signs and chants. A reckoning, a remembering. May looked down at Rex, his breathing soft and steady, the scar on his leg now wrapped in bandages and love. "Your story is saving people," she whispered. "Even now." And just like that, the dog they tried to forget became the voice no one could ignore. It started with a whistleblower. A man from inside the military's K9 unit came forward, anonymously at first, then publicly. He had seen the footage, watched May's interview, read the letters, and something inside him broke. Within days, he released documents, internal memos, emails, evaluations, proving that Rex wasn't the only one. Dozens of dogs had been part of the classified program, special training, high-risk deployments, and when their usefulness ended, they were retired without honors. Some were euthanized, others abandoned in foreign territories. A few, like Rex, simply disappeared. The outcry was immediate. Congress called for hearings. Hashtags became petitions. News anchors went from sympathetic to furious. "How many heroes have we forgotten?" one demanded live on air. How many were discarded because they had no voice to protest? Within a week, the Department of Defense was forced to respond. And so came the hearing, the one they never wanted. Thomas was asked to testify. At first, he refused. The trauma, the memories, the weight. It was too much. But then he looked at Rex, the dog who had found him after years apart, who limped into a storm of hatred and never backed down, who never needed words to say, "I'm still with you." Thomas agreed. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, reporters, officials, veterans. May sat behind him, clutching the original letter from the unknown soldier's sibling. Rex was allowed to enter the chamber. When he walked in, three-legged, scarred, but proud, the entire room stood up. Even the officials who had once tried to silence the story. Thomas spoke plainly. No theatrics, no anger, just truth. "I don't care about medals," he said, "or apologies. I care about the lives these dogs gave, the loyalty they never withheld, and the disgrace we showed in return." He took a breath. Rex isn't special because he survived. He's special because he remembered. And that memory, that pain, is why we're here today. The officials shuffled. A few lowered their eyes. Then the questions began. Why wasn't the unit properly decommissioned? Why were there no post-service plans for the dogs? Why were handlers denied adoption? No one had good answers. But the worst blow came from a photo Thomas placed on the table. It was Rex's original intake form. Under disposition if injured, it read, "Evaluate for usefulness. If non-deployable, discard." The room fell silent, gasps, murmurs. One woman on the committee openly wept. By the time the hearing ended, the headlines had already been written. Discarded warriors, the trial they never wanted. Voices for the voiceless, America reckons with its canine heroes. Outside the courthouse, crowds waited. But this time, they weren't shouting. They were holding signs that simply read, "Thank you, Rex. We see you now." And in the middle of it all, standing on trembling legs but refusing to bow, was a dog who had survived war, abandonment, and betrayal, and had finally made the world listen. 3 weeks after the hearing, an envelope arrived at the bakery, official and heavy. Inside was an invitation, embossed seal, gold lettering, formal, rigid, almost sterile. But what it asked was anything but ordinary. The President of the United States would like to honor Rex, K9, Unit Number 348A, with the Medal of Valor. May read it twice. Thomas read it 3 times. Rex didn't read it. But he sensed something. His ears twitched. His eyes met Thomas's and stayed there. The ceremony was scheduled for Veterans Day. At the National Mall, live. The crowd numbered in the thousands. Soldiers, survivors, children, dog handlers, civilians. Some had driven days to attend. Others had flown in from overseas. The stage was draped in red, white, and blue, but all eyes were on the small figure sitting patiently at the center, Rex. His harness was polished, his fur brushed, his 3 legs firm beneath him, as if he'd willed his broken body to stay strong just a little longer. Thomas stood beside him, dressed in the uniform he hadn't worn in over a decade. As the president stepped forward, a military band played softly in the background. Today, the president began, we do more than decorate a hero. We remember what loyalty looks like, what sacrifice feels like, what it means when someone gives everything and asks for nothing. He turned to Rex. This is for every warrior who never spoke, but was never silent. The Medal of Valor was placed gently around Rex's neck. The applause didn't start immediately. People stood in stillness, tears in their eyes, as if holding their breath for a sacred moment, and then, softly, slowly, it began. A ripple of clapping, then louder still, until it was a roar, a standing ovation for a dog who once limped through alleys unnoticed, unloved, unseen. Now, every camera in the world was on him. But Rex didn't bark, he didn't bow, he simply sat tall, head high, eyes steady, as if he understood exactly what was happening, and more importantly, why. Thomas knelt beside him, whispering in his ear, "You did it, buddy. You're not forgotten anymore." May, watching from the front row, felt her hands tremble. This wasn't just closure, it was redemption. As the sun dipped behind the monuments, casting golden light across the marble and memorials, Rex stood, not forced, not guided, but on his own, and gave a single bark, clear, sharp, defiant. The crowd erupted again. And in that moment, amid the noise and tears, the world didn't just see a dog, they saw a legacy. Not forged in glory, but in resilience. Not born of orders, but of choice. A moment that history would remember, not because of who gave the medal, but because of who received it. The bakery was quiet again. No protesters, no cameras, no headlines. Just the smell of rising bread, the clink of coffee cups, and the soft hum of morning life. May wiped the counter with a damp cloth, glancing toward the window where sunlight poured through in golden streaks. At the far corner of the shop, beneath the mural that now permanently adorned the wall, Rex lay on a thick cushion, his head resting gently on his paws. The Medal of Valor hung above him in a frame, alongside his old collar, and a photograph of him with Thomas in uniform, taken years ago in a desert far from this warm little street. Thomas sat beside him now, not in uniform, not as a soldier, but as a friend, as family. Rex's breathing had slowed over the past few weeks. The vet said it was to be expected. His body had been through too much, scars outside and in. But even in these final days, he never whimpered, never gave in. He just watched, observed, listened, and loved. Children still visited. They took turns reading to him. Stories about dogs, about heroes, about kindness. And Rex would rest his head on their knees, content to listen. Always listening. That afternoon, May closed early. Thomas carried Rex in his arms, gently, reverently, to the nearby park. The same one where they used to sit beneath the oak tree, where Rex once barked at ducks and tried to chase butterflies with 3 legs and a stubborn heart. They sat in silence for a long time. Then the breeze picked up. Software warm. Rex stirred, opened his eyes, and looked up at Thomas one last time. No fear, no pain, just trust. Thomas nodded through the tears. "You can rest now, soldier. You're safe." Rex gave one slow blink, then exhaled. The sky held its breath. The oak leaves rustled softly above them, like a final salute. Thomas didn't move, not for a long time. When they buried Rex that evening in the small garden behind the bakery, the community came. No speeches, just candles, flowers, and quiet weeping. Someone played taps on a trumpet. Someone else placed a dog tag on the grave. And on a small stone marker, May engraved the words, He came wounded, but he left whole. Years would pass. The bakery would grow. Children would learn Rex's story in school. And travelers from across the country would stop at the corner of 4th and Lindley, not just for pastries, but to see the mural, the memorial, the garden, and to remember the three-legged dog who walked through hell with courage and came home with grace. Rex never needed words. He just needed someone to see him. And once they did, the world was never the same.